go through, introduce us. Awesome. Thank you, Eric. To some tools and different ideas. And feel free, you can chime in the chat. We'll have time for Q&A at the end, but I think they'll have some conversation throughout as well. And then be sure, if you stay till the end, we're also going to announce some upcoming webinars and some new resources that we're launching. So it will be a packed hour. All right. Savannah, August, are you good if I go ahead and turn it over to you?
Yes, indeed.
All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Megan, for that introduction. And yeah, it's just a little background. Savannah and I co-run a little program that she started years ago that has become this wonderful global neighborhood village building cohort and training. Um, and Savannah started this program about 2 years ago. We're now in over 10 countries, and we're also piloting some really wonderful in-person projects here in town. If you were on the last call a month ago, we explored the idea with another of Megan's guests on how to identify block connectors within your neighborhood. And a question was posed at the very end of that, which was, how do we identify block connectors if our neighborhoods aren't already very connected? And that, of course, is a big question for a lot of us. So I wonder if we could, before we get too far in this, we've talked about whether or not we can keep plants alive. But why don't we also have everyone toss in the chat who you're working for and just a brief single sentence on what is the work that you do. Because the thing that we're going to guide you in today is a way for each of you to get a temperature check on what is your actual relationship with your neighborhood. And depending on what that is, what your first and next steps might be. So just give it an idea of, yeah, who you are and what is the work that you do. Neighborhood specialist for Excelsior Springs. Where is Excelsior Springs, Laura? Hmm. Ah,
Missouri.
nice. That's such an exciting name, Excelsior. Okay. We'll keep on getting some answers in the chat there. Community works, neighborhood liaisons, nice. Um, and while we're getting started with that, Savannah, why don't you go ahead and share the first slide?
Got it.
Block Club president. Nice. So you know who your Block Club activators are. Beat facilitator, neighborhood program coordinator. Excellent. Oh, nice. And we also have independent consultants supporting a range of local initiatives. Nice, which means you probably, Liz, I imagine you interface with lots of different groups. Kelly, working for yourself. But the irony is, I'm not engaged in my own community. Wonderful. Well, this is perfect.
Mm.
This is perfect. Yeah, yeah, thank you for all that. And this is good. We have a range of different people who are interfacing with their communities in different ways. And that's actually a perfect reason for us to bring the tool that we're bringing today. So we want to start off with the connection that again was posed at the last meeting, and that is, how do we build connection, or how do we identify those primed to build connection in a neighborhood where people aren't significantly connected yet? And one of the things that we want to point out is that, especially in a lot of our roles, if you work for a city, if you work for a nonprofit, often your goal is to show up with a program, right? You're here to bring in your particular cohort or training or your particular methodology. Maybe you do asset-based connection, maybe you do a lot of different things. And what we do is, among other things, we try to teach this idea of heartbeats and lightning bolts. Now, you may have heard this from authentic relating. It comes up in a few different trainings. But the notion is, the lightning bolt within a community is something like a block party, right? Or like a really big training that gets hosted, or it's a reason why everyone gets together. And it's the thing that often people think of when they think of, is my community thriving? Well, yeah, we have a block party. Everybody gets together once a year. It looks fantastic. Our pushback on that is that what actually really builds a thriving community and allows it to move forward and have a pulse are not the lightning bolt moments, but actually the heartbeats. And what we mean by heartbeats in this context is the small conversations, right? The hellos, the neighbors knowing each other's name. And in the context of a nonprofit or a city personnel wanting to come into a particular neighborhood and bring their values and their resources and their programming, a challenge can often be that we think of it in the terms of our program, right? Like, well, I'm going to show up and I'm going to offer. But how do you offer something to a people that you haven't taken the time to really get to know and figure out, well, exactly where does my offering fit into this community? And so the way that we want to hold this is we want to map out what are the appropriate heartbeat moments, what are the appropriate levels of slow, consistent connection that can prime your neighborhood to really fully receive your gift. Next slide, Savannah. Yeah. And so the way that we do this and the way that we teach our participants is with this idea of a practitioner's compass. And what this is it's 4 questions that you can ask yourself that'll help you to really figure out what is your personal relationship, what is your organization's relationship with the neighborhood that you work in. And so it's built around the idea of a compass. These are directions you can face, and you move from north all the way through to the west. And these questions start off with, well, what's already here, right? And we'll dive into each of these individually. And you move from, well, once I already know what's here, then who wants to be known, which is how can I take the time to really figure out who's on the ground? Once I know who wants to be known, can I ask what lights people up, which is to say, oh, now I'm going deep, I'm going specific, I'm developing personal, unique relationships. And eventually, when we have all these pieces in place, we move toward who else can carry this, which is to say, can my organization start to empower the people who are actually on the ground? Is the work that I'm doing transferring such that they don't actually need my program anymore because it's providing its value? So, what we're going to do in this call is we're going to step through each of these directions, each of these questions, and we'll have each of you ask these questions of yourself and sort of identify. So, as we move forward, I'd love for all to think of if you're working in one neighborhood, just think of these questions directly for you or your program in your neighborhood. If you're working in multiple, maybe hone in on like what's one that you have a little bit of higher touch right now or the program that you're really trying to launch right now, etc. And just use that as a compass for yourself as we move forward. So, next slide, Savannah. Okay. So, starting with attune. Each of you, I'd love for you to ask yourself this question. Can you describe the daily and weekly rhythms of the neighborhood you work in? Do you know where people already gather, even if informally? Can we go ahead and get some short answers in the chat for that question? And while you're answering, I'll tell you the idea of this is to say, this is the very first step, right? You know that you want to bring something, and that's wonderful. But do you already know what's going on? Have you already attuned to, are there people in the neighborhood that could actually help you? Are there people in the neighborhood doing something complementary to your program or that might even challenge it, that has a different angle, a different language, etc.? Yeah, so people go for regular walks throughout the day. That's wonderful. Local restaurants and grocery stores, neighborhood parks. Oh, I like that. There's a Spanish speaking group, a bike group night. Yeah, yeah. So see, these are all wonderful things, right? Every single one of these is a touch point. And what we recommend is that you consider these touch points as not just pulses of the neighborhood that you are viewing, but pulses of the neighborhood that you actually want to learn to listen to. Because in those local parks and front yards, in that really active gardening club, I bet a lot more goes on than just gardening, right? Because while they're gardening together, they're talking, they're sharing their stories, they're offering resources, they're telling each other, hey, there's this company that's trying to bring something into our town. Do we like it? Do we not like it? And so there's really important things that are happening in all these places where people are already connected. So, when we think of the heartbeats and the lightning bolts, as you're attuning, a way that you can start to build your heartbeats is by showing up consistently. Because when you show up consistently, you're there, you're having conversations, you're asking questions, you're being a part of that neighborhood. It makes you and your organization, your identity familiar. Oh, you want to go back to the previous slide, Savannah? It makes you
Sorry about that.
familiar before you ever try to bring your program in. And this is really important because if you bring your program in first and you say, I am the solution, You're a solution to what? You're a solution to a problem that you're presuming that they have, and you may be entirely right. But there is something really beautiful in allowing the neighborhood to tell you that they want the solution to the problem that you say you're bringing. So if you look down on the bottom here, we have some suggestions on how to drop in. And so I'm going to read a couple of these. And if anybody has already done any of these, maybe come off of mute and just tell me how it's worked out for you. So, like, you have the chance to walk the neighborhood at different times. Just take note. Oh,
I get excited. I'm sorry.
take note of who's out and where they're lingering. Um, Identify informal gathering points. Most of you have already done that. That's really wonderful. But then once you've identified those gathering points, take a moment to go and talk to the residents there. And while you're there, look for existing channels and infrastructure. Are there tiny libraries that have notes on them? Are there coffee shops where people actually pass notes back and forth? So, has anybody already done this step in your neighborhood? Have you taken the time to attune and really figure out what's going on there that either is beneficial to what you want to bring, or maybe even made you rethink it and realize you might need to take a different approach? Anybody just come off of mute and give us an example?
Hello, can
Hmm.
you hear me?
Hmm.
Okay. My name is Tanya Hooks. I'm in Chicago, and I've actually been doing the work. I started from zero. I've been doing this about five years, I'd say, and I started from zero and zoomed forward. I have a group chat. The neighborhood has changed a lot. I've met all the new folks. I'm at the point um, where I'm sort of burnt out because I'm doing all the work.
Yeah. Hmm.
I hear
And
that.
um,
Yep.
they like the changes. I mean, I've been working with the University of Chicago. We have a back alley jazz, which, if we get the funding, it'll be the 6th year. I've
Oh,
engaged some of my neighbors in the north side of Chicago that have come south to these things. I started working with the
beautiful.
Chicago Police Department. I do block cleanups, everything.
Hmm.
But no one wants to help,
Yep.
and if they have a problem, then yeah, they come to me and they expect me to solve all the problems, and do everything. I have a full-time job too.
Hmm.
Um, and but no one wants to do the work. So I'm looking for new ideas on how to engage people because the apathy is just it's
Mm.
it's not only concerning, it burns me out. And I'm
Yeah.
almost to the point of giving up and actually moving. Even though I like doing the work, I like seeing the changes that I'm seeing because I'm in my parents' home and they would be really proud to see all of the work that's been done.
Yeah.
Um, but
Mm.
I'm feeling used. um, so yeah, I mean, I've got a group chat, which helps sometimes to a detriment because now they're group chatting all the problems, but no one wants to help solve the problems. Like now we have a postal problem. The mail is not getting delivered, porch pirates, and I'm
Yeah.
expected to solve all these problems by myself. so,
Yep.
so yeah, that's where I am.
Okay, yeah, Tanya, you are speaking a language I imagine a lot of the people in this group have spoken themselves in the past. It's a big problem, it's a big question. And we will get to the stage that you're at here in just a couple
Okay.
questions. So maybe kind of walk through there. But it is a really important question, right? Like, how do we take the thing that we want to offer and then transition it to where the community is supporting us in that endeavor so it's sustainable? That is a
Yes,
perennial problem for everyone in these groups, for sure.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. I got it up and running. How do
Yep.
we get it to keep running kind of, you know,
Yep.
by itself?
Yeah, totally. So we'll come back to that question here in just a little bit. Thank you. Um, so has anyone else had an experience of attuning to their neighborhood?
I can chime in. We have a little dog. We take a walk around the block once in the morning and once in the evenings. So we can see, the other dog walkers that are also at the nearby park. Many of them do linger and interact. Oftentimes, we know more of the dog's names than we do the people's names,
Mhm.
but you get a sense for um, who's out and about um, as dog walkers.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think one thing I notice is the playground is such an incredible place to meet new people and see people regularly, but I
Mhm.
see kind of a gap for folks who, might not be going to the playground with a child often or might not be walking their dog at the dog park, which is similarly really friendly. So that's kind of a great thing in our neighborhood and maybe an opportunity area.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so there we go. Yeah. So the attuning stage is really important because before we listen, if we're not careful, we could step on people's toes or we could try and like come in a little bit hot, right? But after we've attuned, next we want to actually take the time to connect. And the question here, and again, each of you consider your neighborhood and just ask this question: do you have regular informal interactions with at least 5 to 10 residents not affiliated with your organization? Now mix that number up, right? If your neighborhood is 1,000 people, you might want it to be more. If your neighborhood is a small single apartment building, then maybe it's just two or three, right? But the idea being, okay, you want to show up here, you want to make a difference here, wonderful. You want to live here and be deeply involved. Do you already have regular interactions? And if not, then before you try and do anything else, we would recommend that that's one of the first things you want to start doing. And so, whether it's in the dog parks or the kid parks, whether it's in the coffee shops or anywhere else, there's a way that we can go ahead and take the time to say, okay, who actually lives here? And how can I go ahead and start deepening in with them? In this case, the heartbeat would be that every name learned, every returning conversation, every moment of recognition, those are the pulses, right? Those are the ways that we start to build up trust and we start to learn to identify, oh, okay, we're together here. We don't just pass each other on the street. We say something, we ask something, we remember something. And really critical here, this phase can often kind of frustrate people because they want to get to the doing. The doing feels really nice, the doing feels really big. And so we often say that this stage can look like nothing is happening, but it's actually the glue. This is the time when you're taking the pace and you're going slowly, you're saying hello, you're remembering names, you're maybe making more walks with the dog than you think that you need to, You're finding a reason to just walk down to the park even when you don't need to be at the park. Maybe you take a Zoom call sitting out on the street corner. And you do these kind of things because you're making yourself available to start building those connections. And in a lot of ways, this can be a little bit of effort for sure. But if you think about it, so this line down here at the bottom where it says, be present in third spaces without an agenda or clipboard, right? Like, don't bring your program or your idea just yet. Bring yourself, bring your questions, build consistency. You're there at the same place and the same time. At first, you're greeting people, eventually, you're remembering names. And after that, you're having real conversations. You want to start developing relationships with these people. Does it take energy? Yes. Yes, it does. And also, very quickly, it starts to give energy. Because in a lot of ways, when you show up for people, you invite them to show up for you as well. So, oh, they do notice. Thank you, Tanya. Yeah. So, how does everyone feel with this question? Do you feel like you're already connected? Do you feel like you already know a decent amount of people? Or do you maybe feel like there's a little bit more mystery out there than you would have admitted? Feel free to put it in chat or just come off of mute. Nice. Good
Something
chat.
that comes to me is like this one never ends. I'm always here.
Mhm.
The other things we'll do next will build, but there's just so many people that I still don't have relationships with in our neighborhood that I want to deepen with. So it just feels like everyone is a universe that I get to continue like opening the door to.
Nice. Yeah, yeah, Marissa. So knowing people at your school, but not your immediate neighborhood. And that's so common, right? Like we're all attached to various affinity groups. So it could be your school, it could be maybe you go to a particular language group or you're in some sort of personal connection class, a business class, etc. You play soccer. but we often don't know the people right outside of our door. It's such a wild thing. Megan, most neighborhoods know folks like them within their age, culture, and language. Nice, exactly. Yeah, perfect example, Megan. And also to Savannah's point, it's worth realizing that the stages of this compass are not stages in a row for a reason. This isn't stage one, two, three, four, because by the time you get to stage four, you still need to be doing stage one. So all directions of the compass are incredibly important at all times, right? Um, this is ongoing, life-giving when we get to discover the gifts of humanity around us. Nice. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and so whenever you're asking yourself this question, do I have regular informal interactions? You can also change the context. So, like, do I have regular informal interactions with people in the school? Yes, sounds like yes. But outside of my door? No. And Megan might say, well, do I have conversations with people in my age range and in my interest group? Yes. But do I have them with the elderly folks in the area? Maybe not. You can reframe this question in multiple different ways, and it can help you to understand, oh, who could I actually go deeper with right now? Like, who could I turn toward? And there are multiple ways to think about this. One is as a neighbor. And as a neighbor, you want to be building your connection all around you, and that's fantastic. But two, as practitioners, we always want to be thinking, who is it that we hope to be in service of? And if we hope to be in service of them, how deep in relationship are we with them already? And so I want to help this particular group of people. Well, then I want to ask myself this question about this group of people, right? And get a little granular with it. Because again, I can show up with my program. It can be a great event. 60 people could come out. We could fill the house. We could have a wonderful time. I can hand out my pamphlets and everybody goes home. And if I don't already have a good relationship with them, it could easily end there. We threw a great event. It's all wonderful. They took the pamphlet, they brought it home, they left it on the kitchen counter for a couple days, it got recycled, and life goes on, right? But if they have a good rapport with me, if they're going to see me at the coffee shop tomorrow, if they know we're going to have a conversation in the future, all that work stays in their head. It stays active, and we get to actually start building these relationships that we want. So, next slide, Savannah. Okay. And this, in a lot of ways, is where it starts to get juicy. So we've attuned, we've taken the time to listen, and then we've turned toward our neighbors and we've started to develop relationships. Well, now it's time to figure out what lights people up. So again, turn toward the neighborhood that you're in and think this question. Can you name specific passions, skills, or even concerns of residents you work or live with? Not in general terms here. We're talking specifically. Do you know things about people that matter? So again, toss it in the chat, come out on mute, but just tell me, like, how in depth do you know the people around you? Hmm. Taxes lights people up. All right. Fred is very proud of his garden. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so yeah, Christina knows people are very upset about their taxes. Is that a general thing you know about your neighbors, or is there someone specifically you've talked to about that, Christina?
Um, it's kind of a general thing. So I posted before, I used to be a city council member for my district, my neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
which was 7 years ago, and it was a big deal then. But our reval just happened, and like it's just insane how much the taxes are going up. And I
Mm-hmm.
know the city I'm in the like wealthier neighborhood that often annoyingly they act as if they're not part of the rest of the city. Um, and
Yep.
it's this constant kind of like fight with the city overall kind of thing.
Yep.
But to Tanya's point, and again, as you echoed earlier, they like to complain, but then they don't show up, for example, to the city council meetings, to the, or the budget committee
Mm-hmm.
meetings and things like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yep. Yep. So, Chet, you ask a really good question. Why do I say don't survey people? Does anybody have an idea on that?
I, this Christina, I know in my community, people are tired of being surveyed.
That's a pretty easy answer. But I think if I were to take it further, I'd say in the last slide, you notice that I said be in the coffee shops without a clipboard, right? And it's the same thing here, but going a little bit deeper. If I'm asking you a question and I'm like, hey, I have a survey, what do you care about? What are you passionate about? I'm going down a checklist here. And no matter how creative I get with those questions, I'm surveying you, which puts me in a role and puts you as the focus of that role. And that is valuable at certain times for sure. But if you really want to go deep with people, I recommend trying to go deep with them as a person and not as a facilitator of your program. And so if you are surveying, you will always inherently be in the I am surveying you relationship. But if you sit down and you have a conversation about their depths, about their passions, about their concerns as a citizen, but even more as a neighbor, you both get to ask the questions. You both build trust. And one of the really big pieces here, we mentioned it in the beginning, but connection moves at the pace of trust. And ultimately, that means that they need to trust you too. And so the reason we take these steps is not so that you can get to know all of your neighbors. That's an important piece. But realistically, it's so your neighbors, your constituents, your members can get to know you. And if every single time you interact with them, you've got your hat on and your hat says, I work with the city, ultimately, there's always a little bit of a firewall between the two of you. But if you're sitting down at the coffee shop and you're hanging out and you're both talking shop, and you allow yourself to be a little vulnerable and share some of your own concerns or some of your own passions, a different kind of depth and specifically a different kind of trust gets developed. So Andrea says, I feel like I know this about other people on the board, but I feel more disconnected from the neighborhood at large in terms of what other residents would like to see us put into action. Totally. Yeah, yeah. And that is the challenge, right? Is like, how do we take the time to listen when we're all so busy? We're working around the clock. I only have 20 minutes to go out and talk to people and get these answers, or I'm sending it via an email survey, etc. So if we drop back into the heartbeat moments, discovery happens when heartbeat work reaches enough density that conversations open up naturally, right? And this is the difference in a survey and, oh, I just happened to see this person multiple times on the street, and now they're sharing with me what they really feel and not just the cliff notes. Because you can't learn what someone cares about if you haven't built the trust to have that conversation. And we know, we really understand that all of you are extraordinarily busy and you'd be putting in this time if you felt like you had it. And we all wish that there was a really easy answer here. But the truth is, connection does move at the pace of trust. And so if you consider, man, I don't really know what my constituents want, often it is because we have been only approaching them from specifically the lens of policy or specifically the lens of the program that we're implementing, right? Um, and so it can be tough. And it doesn't necessarily have to be you that does it. If you're on the city council, do you have an intern or do you have someone who you can say, hey, part of your role is actually to go and just spend time in the city? Part of your role is to go and become a relatable person who can have these conversations, right? Like there are ways that you can organize. There are ways that you can take the time to really make them understand that who they are as a person is just as important as who they are as a citizen. All right. Yeah. Yeah. So Eric asks, what are some questions that we use to uncover what lights people up? Excellent question. And so one thing we want to point out down here on the bottom, you'll see this phrase that we really, really love. Oh, where did we go?
I started clicking on links and got distracted. So sorry.
Yep.
Megan sent some good links. Okay, I'm gonna go find it for you.
Okay. Well, the phrase is sparkle hunting. We love this idea of sparkle hunting. And what sparkle hunting is anytime you are in conversation with someone, you're not just having the conversation, you're not just talking about the data, the information, you're watching for the moment when they sparkle. And a sparkle could be, oh, I'm excited and I'm really lit up. A sparkle could be, oh, I really have something intense there. But in the moment when the person you're talking to gives you some emotional response, be willing to pivot and follow that interest, follow that sparkle. Because when they do that, you're going to get to know who they really are. And so this again points to the difference in a survey. And a survey might have a really important question. And we figured out how to ask that question and we get the answer, and that's fantastic. But when I ask that question, maybe you give me a kind of neutral answer that I needed, but right at the end of it, you got excited about something a little bit different. Well, the thing that I'm actually going to learn here that matters, that develops the connection, is I'm going to follow that excitement. But that excitement didn't live on my survey, right? It lived in the moment when two humans were talking. And so, Eric, to your point, it's less really about individual questions because different questions excite different people, right? I could have a conversation with Liz and Tanya and Chet, and different questions would get all three of you lit up, right? But instead, what we encourage is that you do a mix of sharing about yourself and what you care about, and a mix of asking questions, because everybody responds a little bit different to, oh, you led me a little bit and that got me excited, or you gave me an opening and I want to fill it. But the real thing that you want to do is look at the person across from you and realize they are an interesting person. They have a voice here that matters, and maybe I don't see it yet, and that's okay. But if I take the time, I can get really excited about them, and they can open up, and I can learn something, and we can actually start to move that trust forward, right? We can start to move that connection forward. So you follow their enthusiasm, not your agenda. You track their gifts and their interests very intentionally. You say, oh, okay, the people in my neighborhood care about this. That wasn't even on my radar. But maybe when I think about it, my program could actually encompass this. It sits a little bit outside of our view. Maybe it kind of stretches our scope or our budget. But all of a sudden, I start to realize because I talk to 10 people on my street and they all care about this other thing, that maybe shifting what I thought I was going to do just a little bit means that it will land so much more and more valuably for the people that are there. But until you take the time to figure out what they're really, really interested in, you won't ever have that information. And when we are blinded by, well, I showed up with my agenda, I've already designed my program, I already know what the outline is, I already know what the bullet points are, and I don't take the time to listen, I might miss that maybe just modifying my program by just a little bit would actually make it so much more valuable for the people on the ground. And the last point on this slide is you'll notice that we mentioned lightning bolt here. And so in the heartbeats and lightning bolt moment, the idea is that events should really show up once we've already developed that connection. And we put the lightning bolt here to say, if you asked yourself the first two questions and you found yourself not quite attuned yet and not quite connected to the people yet, it's our recommendation that you push the lightning bolt back, you push the event back, you push the launch of your program back and take time. But once you've arrived here, once you start to know what your people are excited about, what they're concerned about, what their complaints are, you can start to really say, okay, now we want to come in with our offering because we know who it's actually going to land for, because we know who might assist us, because we know the challenges, because we know who's been here before. Are we repeating something that was already said? Are we speaking a language that works for the block over where we ran it last week and that was great, but it doesn't work here and we didn't even know it? By the time you get to this section, you'll really start to have that understanding. Does anybody have any examples of people who you got in touch with very specifically, you learned something unique about them, and it changed your approach to either your neighborhood or your program? Have you ever learned something about someone and thought, oh, okay, I'm actually going to move a little bit differently now? Oh, and also I love your comment, Chet, on the neighbor magic, connecting in a deeper way with nearby residents. Nice. Hmm.
I can jump in. There's a woman in our neighborhood who's pretty curmudgeonly in the most endearing, adorable way. And one of the things that really lights her up is gardening. And we're starting a garden collective. And I can't quite say that I noticed gardening and then it was like, oh, let's do a garden collective. That wasn't the timeline. But I can say that it is a real dream to watch her smile so much more because we're gardening together. And it just lights me up that we get to follow that thread and see such a pillar of our community get to come out and express herself more.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, before we move on to the last direction, something I want to point out. Eric's comment. When I found out Charity loves music and her husband is a DJ, we brought them to provide music at the block party. Excellent. Yes, yes. And then their gifts gets to shine. Yeah, and you wouldn't be able to do that if you didn't take the time to get to know them, right? So if we think about the context of moving from disconnection to connection, the stages that we've gone through, they take a little bit of time. But what's really important is it's less about the time and it's more about the actual consistency and the investment of energy because you don't know how long it will take. When you think of attuning, which is to say, I showed up, I don't know a lot, maybe I've been here and I've just been too busy to pay attention. Maybe I just moved into a neighborhood or my organization just turned its sights on this particular area. So you take the time to attune. And that can be a fairly short process because the most important thing is you're paying attention to what's already here. You're putting your ear to the ground. And it can also take time because maybe the really important woman who's going to tell you the secret about how this whole neighborhood came together doesn't leave her house once every 3 months. And you'll never know if you're not out there on the day that she leaves her house. So each of these steps moves at their own pace. But if you took the time to attune, and then in doing so, you started asking yourself, okay, who wants to be known? You make yourself available. You position yourself in the coffee shops. You're having conversations. You start to know where the third spaces are. You start to actually have conversations and where you remember people and they remember you. And having done that, you arrive at this page right here where you're figuring out what lights people up. You're actually getting to know who has the gifts. You're getting to know who's been showing up for this neighborhood for years. You're getting to know who's been paying attention. And maybe all they do is track all the problems. But hey, they know all the problems. You organize all these people in your mind. By the time you've done this, you are already further ahead than most people will ever be in their neighborhoods. If you take the time to do this from a personal level or from an organizational level, you are now actually connected. And now let's move on to the last direction. And so here is where Tanya's question came in early in the beginning. And it's also where a lot of our organizations end up, right? And the question is, if your organization stepped back for a few months, would connection continue on its own? Now, again, you can change the few months context, like that's specific to your program, or it's specific to if you just want to be a wonderful neighbor, right? But ultimately, you do want to be asking yourself, okay, I've been doing this work for a while. Tanya's been carrying a torch for a long time. That's really hard. The city's been trying to implement this plan and it keeps not being received by the citizens, and we don't quite know why. And so, if you stepped back for a few months, would connection continue on its own? So, give us some answers in the chat or, oh, yep, Savannah's commenting on Nate Tubbs taking years to attune to his neighbors, and that is very, very true. He has a wonderful story of how taking the time is the reason why his incredible successes were able to stick. So yeah, does anybody have a story of either realizing, like Tanya, that if they backed off, things would collapse? Or have you ever been in the situation where you realized you had done such a good job and you were so connected that you knew you could take time?
This is Christina again. So going back to what you said about connection moves at the pace of trust, which I fully believe in, while at the same time, in this day and age of trying to understand how to scale if you're the one lone Tanya or other person. So to give an example, right after the pandemic, I was like, we need to get out, and I was running a nonprofit at the time that I just retired from, but I had sent out this mass text at the time to start a walking club across the city, and 1,000 people like expressed interest, and all of a sudden it was like 1,000 people. Did not know what to do with that many people in terms of being able to coordinate. Like I couldn't walk 24 hours a day at the different times that different people wanted to walk. So it was not grant funded, none of those things. So I did the walks on Saturdays. I picked a time and I would go walk, and there was about 10 people, mostly women. It was very intergenerational that showed up. But the funny thing is, and yes, I need to walk too for my exercise, but having the obligation of showing up on some of the Saturdays was a bit tiring. But in particular, if I didn't show up, it's like they didn't know how to walk, right? And it was like we walked the same route like every single time, but unless I was there to say go, like no one would want to show up to be there the next week, like if I couldn't be there for whatever reason. And so it's going back to like what Tanya expressed. I just talked to a woman yesterday, Vanessa Elias, who started Block Party USA, which I just learned about. And she expressed something similar about a dinner that she organized for the last 10 years. And she wanted to step back. And it's like no one wanted to step up. And she kind of misses it. So I think she's going to try to get back into it. So again, I guess the question, going back to what Tanya said earlier and what you have here, is like, is there a way to inspire leadership? And again, the book Tribes by Seth Godin is, I think it's by him, the short book that talks about so many people want to follow someone, and the problem we have in society is not enough people taking that step to be the person that they follow. But then, of course, we get burnt out. I'll pass it on to Tanya.
Thanks, Christina. And I did ping you on LinkedIn. Last week, we have a monthly Beat Facilitator meeting with the Chicago Police Department. And right now, we're having a lot of car thefts. In fact, 4 on my block. And while I was on vacation, mind you. But last week, I had to travel for work, and we had our monthly Beat Facilitator meeting. And via Zoom, and no one showed up. I have a co-facilitator who lives on the opposite end of my district, and I just blew up. I'm like, you didn't get anyone to come out with all these car thefts we have going on? I mean, this is, it's beyond comprehension. So I got to rally all the folks for the beat meetings now my car didn't get broke. My car is in my garage. These are people that park on the street. And you mean to tell me that you couldn't come to a once a month beat meeting, your car got broken into? And then my co-facilitator, she couldn't even rally the folks. I can't even go out of town. And so it's really, for real, it's disturbing to me, and I'm feeling a really bit, these people, they're ungrateful, for all the things that I've done, and they never say thank you. And I'm carrying the load of, helping with the police, the community, helping with entertainment. It's like going a bit far. This is not a paying job. And while I enjoy doing it, like right now at the point I'm feeling used, for real. Yeah. Oh, Nate Tubbs. Oh, Nate, I know your name from somewhere. Yes, let's connect. You know what I'm talking about, Nate.
Yeah, I
Nate
do. I do, Tanya. And hey, everybody, good to be with you all. So, and I think what you said is very real. And sometimes people show up when there's problems, and sometimes they don't even show up even when there are problems like that, like you're saying too. But so I just want to say I resonate with what you're saying, and I hear that. And I would love to connect sometime. I think there's a couple Chicago people on here, so I hope we can connect more.
Yeah, I wonder, Nate, actually, so it seems like there are 3 angles that I would love to touch on here. One is that Megan wants to know how to find the people who are already doing this work if their organization can't map it themselves. 2 is Eric had a really good point that he found someone who had energy and supported them to pursue their energy. And then 3 is Tanya and so many people are experiencing that what's already being carried is having a hard time being carried. Those feel to me like 3 really good examples of kind of like the primary ways that this work goes. And Nate, I wonder, do you have anything you'd like to share with the group and not just with Tanya on that last one? Because I know this is something you care about so much.
Yeah, thanks, August. I resonate with all this conversation. I think that the thing about even the slide you have as far as like who else is carrying this, definitely experienced that of the balance of like it does take those initiators. It does take the people who are going to spark something and get it going. But then if you are the person who that spark is relying on for too long, it can become an unhealthy reliance on you. And so like how can you shift that to where it's shared, to where others, are co-owning it with you? And just, as an example, we had a point in our community where with our neighborhood civic association, I was sparking and leading, initiating for about 4 years with that, and felt like this isn't good for any of us if it relies on me in the same way that it has relied on me. It's not good for me. It's not good for my neighborhood if it continues to rely on me in that way. And so, kind of this decision to say, hey, I'm going to step back. I'm going to support and cheer on and help anyone who wants to step up in this. And there was some vulnerable moments there where like, is this going to continue or not? And we've had a number of different events or initiatives that were like, hey, this is the annual thing and we always do this. But then realizing like, hey, maybe that doesn't happen this year because no one's stepping up. And that's okay. We've had things come and that have died out as well. And it wasn't sustainable. And there wasn't the champion to do it again the next year. And so I think there's this kind of evolution and life cycle in the neighborhood too, where like there's life for things for a few years and then sometimes they go away, and that's okay. But there's still, I think for me, the real nexus was that thing you said earlier about the spark of like, are we doing this because of the spark of it? Or are we doing it because we feel like we have to? How can we follow the spark in ourselves and in others? Because that's the only way it's going to be repeated or sustainable or carry on. There's got to be the spark. So those are some thoughts.
Yeah. Thank you, Nate. And that leads to the one suggestion I would make, and this is something that honestly we're right at the core of it right now, right? We're talking about how do we continue carrying it forward, and that's the big question so many people ask. And one of the suggestions I would make on this call with the limited amount of time we have left is, are you trying to hand off the thing that you have in the way that you want it to continue going forward? Or are you trying to help someone else carry something that they are interested in carrying? And the way that you could approach this is have the conversations about the concerns. So people were having their cars broken into. That's terrible. So a meeting was organized with the police, and that's fantastic. And no one showed up. And there's easily, Tanya, I hear you. You said they are not grateful. And I hear that. And I absolutely believe that you feel that. And I also can imagine without being in your neighborhood, there are quite a few people who are grateful, but who maybe don't know how to show their gratitude in a way that is landing with you. And so my question for you would be, could you go to the people who had their cars broken into and ask them what would they like to do? And also, how would they like to host it? Would they like to lead a conversation with those police? And this is just an open door. What you'll find is they'll say yes or they'll say no, and then you let the conversation go on and you start to move it in the direction of, okay, how would you like to lead here? How would you like to support this? What kind of support would you like to be involved in so that we as a neighborhood can organize? And I cannot tell you what will come out of that conversation. But what I can tell you that whatever comes out of that conversation will be something that is collectively brought instead of just something that is brought to them and delivered. And there's a difference there that you won't actually know until you take the time to figure out, because what you were bringing absolutely was important and it was incredibly valuable. And for whatever reason, it didn't land. And so now, if you are approaching that burnout, and I just want to thank you for all the work that you've done for them, that's incredible. And also, oh, please don't burn out. Please don't burn out without at least giving yourself a shot of approaching everyone else and asking them, hey, how would you like to show up? If this
Yeah.
was yours, what would you do? And
Yeah.
this one, go ahead, Tanya.
Yeah, I'm writing these things down. The partner for the elderly, that's a great one. The survey, the person that got her car broken into twice, she called me a couple weeks ago for something totally different. Has never called me. She's on the group chat. She's the one that kind of kind of, because she had a car broken in twice, didn't show up. And she didn't even call the police department. We can make a police report over the phone. And she didn't even do that. And they don't understand that the police go by trends. They look at data to reallocate resources to a particular area when a particular crime is taking place. But if they don't know about it, they can't do it. So anyway, she called me after I went off about her not calling the police department on group chat and everything. She called me to say that UPS delivered a package that was not hers to a neighbor that's in back of me on the other street. She called me to ask me, did I know them, so that I could intervene on the package that was delivered on her doorstep. And she's like, since you know everyone. No, I don't. I mean, and even if I did, I didn't receive the package and I'm not going to take it from you. It's not yours. I mean, it just, it goes on and on. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm trying, and I'm not going to, I would love to give something up or just have someone help, even something small. I mean, like one other thing, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to take the whole, but I bought a snowblower for the block for my side of the street, because my neighbor on the other side of the street, he has his own snowblower and he snowblows the entire block. I mean, the entire side of his street. And I felt it was unfair over here. So I bought a snowblower, asked one of my neighbors to snowblow over here, let him keep it. I put gas in it and everything. And we had our big snow, and I waited. I was like, Isaac, I mean, well, my wife told me to wait until all the snow. I was like, yeah, but it's going to ice under. I mean, it's just one thing after another. Yeah. So I'm going to take it back and I'll do it myself. I mean, I'm just, yeah. Nate knows.
Yeah, no, I hear you, Tanya. So we only have a couple minutes before I want to pass it back to Megan. I want to say one last thing, which I think gets to a lot of these answers here, and it's actually more in Eric's comment earlier. He said that during discovery, he found out that one of his neighbors lights up when grilling. So he asked, hey, we're having an activity. Would you be willing to be the grill chef? And eventually that took off and he didn't have to provide the energy. Now, this is a fun version, right? Because, of course, someone likes grilling. You could probably get him to come and grill. But to me, that also is the sparkle hunting that allows you to identify, okay, where are people interested in showing up? And so a thing that you can do is start to have these conversations. And this also speaks, Megan, to your point earlier of how do we begin to identify the people who can take on some of these roles for us, is when we're spending the time to attune and to listen, we also go listening for anyone who has a complaint or an excitement, a thing they want to offer, a thing they wish existed. And we can start to have the conversations that nurture those things and say, oh, yeah, I see that you really care about that. What would you do different? What would support you in making that happen? Or, oh, you really seem to know everyone. Like, can we have conversations with you about what's the pulse here? And ultimately, just asking yourself, what do I need? What does this neighborhood have to offer? And then as you're taking the time to get to know everyone, keep your ear to the ground and pay attention and see, are there people here who I can empower? And it won't be easy, as Tanya has found. You can't just ask someone. You can't even apparently hand them a snowblower and that fix the problem, So it's not a short, easy fix for sure. But I do believe it has been my experience that if you take the time, and specifically that you're always having the conversations about, oh, you care about that. Tell me more. Oh, you are interested in that. How can I support you to do that? Even if you still need to carry the torch for a while, you can be in the practice of handing the torch off. And it might take a little while, but you can orient yourself to saying, I want to empower the people around me. And I don't get to choose what I'm empowering them in, but I get to go looking for what do they care about in our neighborhood and help them to pick that up. And I think that does it for our time today. Megan, I defer to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, August and Savannah. Definitely, y'all check out the Neighborhood Village Project. They are doing some really cool things And man, I'm like, I need to pay y'all to come to Orlando, Florida to have this conversation with my neighborhood association, which is probably me trying to get out of some hard work that I should be doing. But yeah, in our last minute or two, I'm just going to put a couple links in the chat. So kind of as we've been talking about today, this stuff does not happen overnight, right? There's a lot of hard work in it. And so if you want a community, nope, that's my dog. I'm so sorry. If you want a community of folks, that actually happens. Uh, Here we go. Who are like cheering you on and who are there going through this with you. Go ahead, sign up for the Community Building Hub. That is just for local leaders across the country who are strengthening neighborhoods and connecting neighbors. So we talk about a lot of these questions, right? How do we balance what happens when folks aren't joining in or leading alongside us? And so I wanted to point that out also. Our next webinar, and we've got a lot of fun ones coming up, we're going to be talking about how to get started with asset mapping. I'll say this webinar is specifically targeted for local government and nonprofit leaders because we'll be launching our Discover the Gifts resource, which is a workshop that organizational leaders can provide to neighborhoods to help them understand ABCD and just to get started with how do we discover the gifts of residents. So we'll be launching that tool for cities and for nonprofits to be able to start really that discovery that August in Savannah we're talking about. So you can go ahead, the link is in the chat to sign up for that as well. All right, well, we are right at time. So I am gonna go ahead. Thank you so much again, August, Savannah, the Neighborhood Village Project crew. I'll be staying on for a few more minutes if anyone has questions, but I am so looking forward to seeing y'all around. All right, have a good one, y'all.
Thanks, y'all. If anybody has questions, feel free to stay